When Eleanor Brooks signed the lease renewal for her small apartment above Maple Street, her hand trembled slightly. Not because of her age. Not because of the arthritis that visited her fingers every winter. But because, for the first time in her 70 years, she had written down something that wasn't true. Marital status, widow. She stared at the word for a long moment before folding the paper carefully and sliding it across the manager's desk. The building had recently been purchased by a large property company. The new owners planned to renovate the apartments, and rents were rising all over town. Current residents who qualified for the Senior Stability Program would receive protection from the increase. Widows and widowers received additional priority. Divorced tenants did not. 23 years had passed since Eleanor's difficult divorce. Long enough for the sharp edges to soften. Long enough to forgive, mostly. But not long enough to erase the quiet embarrassment that many women of her generation still carried. Widow sounded gentler than divorced. Widow invited sympathy. Divorced invited questions. And Eleanor was tired of questions. She had lived in apartment 3B for 18 years. Every corner held memories. The kitchen window where she watched spring rain. The bookshelf her father built by hand. The faded yellow curtains she had sewn herself during the summer of 1989. Leaving felt like losing another piece of her life. So she told a small lie. And every evening afterward, she carried its weight alone. She watered the plants in the hallway. She checked on Mrs. Parker in 2A after doctor's appointments. She baked banana bread for new neighbors. Kindness came naturally to Eleanor. Dishonesty did not. Months passed. Then one Thursday afternoon, a black sedan pulled into the parking lot. A tall man in his early 50s stepped out wearing jeans instead of a suit. He introduced himself to residents as Daniel Mercer. The CEO. The owner. Eleanor recognized his face from the newsletter. She expected someone distant. Someone hurried. Instead, Daniel spent the afternoon replacing loose light bulbs alongside the maintenance staff. He listened more than he talked. He remembered names. When Mrs. Parker mentioned her grandson's graduation, he wrote down the date. When Mr. Alvarez complained about the broken bench near the garden, Daniel sat beside him on the cracked wood and promised to fix it. There was something old-fashioned about him. The kind of person who still sent handwritten thank you notes. The kind of person Eleanor remembered from her childhood. Back when neighbors borrowed sugar without embarrassment. Back when people stayed on front porches until the streetlights came on. A week later, Eleanor found a letter slipped beneath her door. Please stop by the office when convenient. Her stomach tightened immediately. She already knew. The records department had discovered the discrepancy while updating files. For 2 nights, she barely slept. She rehearsed explanations. Excuses. Apologies. On Monday morning, she walked slowly downstairs carrying a folder of paperwork she wasn't sure she would need. Daniel stood when she entered. Ms. Brooks, he said gently. Thank you for coming. His office surprised her. No expensive artwork. No polished executive desk. Just family photographs, a coffee maker, and a framed picture of an old farmhouse. Daniel motioned toward a chair. You've been here 18 years. Yes. And according to your neighbors, you practically run the building. A nervous smile crossed Eleanor's face. I just try to help. He nodded. Then he opened the file. The information on your application wasn't accurate. There it was. The truth sitting quietly between them. Eleanor folded her hands together. I'm sorry. Her voice cracked. She took a slow breath. I know what I did was wrong. Daniel didn't interrupt. So she continued. When I got divorced, people looked at me differently. She stared down at her wedding ring, worn on her right hand now. Not everyone, of course. But enough. She swallowed carefully. When you're young, you think loneliness comes from being alone. A sad smile touched her face. But sometimes loneliness comes from feeling judged. The office remained still. Only the soft hum of the air conditioner filled the silence. I was afraid of losing my home, she said quietly. And I was ashamed that after all these years, being divorced still felt harder to explain than being widowed. Daniel leaned back thoughtfully. Then he surprised her. My mother did the same thing. Eleanor looked up. After my father left, she told people she was widowed for nearly 10 years. His eyes softened. She said widow sounded like something life had done to her. He paused. Divorce sounded like something she had failed at. Eleanor felt tears gathering. Not from sadness. From recognition. Daniel slid the folder aside. The policy exists to protect people who need stability. He smiled gently. From everything I've learned, that's exactly what you need. Relief washed over her so suddenly she had to steady herself against the chair. You're not angry? Oh, I think honesty matters. He nodded toward the hallway outside. But so does understanding why people hide. The next month, Daniel announced changes to the housing program. No categories based on marital status. Only need. Only circumstance. Only people. When residents thanked him, he simply said the policy needed updating. He never mentioned Eleanor. Not once. Years later, neighbors would still gather near the repaired garden bench on warm evenings. Someone would bring lemonade. Someone else would bring cookies. And Eleanor, sitting beneath the maple trees she loved, would think about second chances. How kindness rarely arrives with grand gestures. More often, it comes quietly. A patient conversation. A listening ear. A person who chooses understanding over judgment. By then, Eleanor no longer avoided the truth. If someone asked about her life, she answered honestly. Yes, she would say with a peaceful smile. I was married once. Then she would add something she had learned far too late. We all carry chapters we'd rather rewrite. She'd look around at the familiar faces gathered close. But when people offer grace instead of criticism, those chapters stop feeling like endings. The evening light would settle softly across Maple Street. Someone would laugh. Someone would share an old memory. And Eleanor would feel grateful for the simple miracle of being fully known. And still welcomed home.